together, with all of the ecosystem partners that we have in the security space, with the powers of the federal agencies that they can bring to bear, with the knowledge and insights that we get from universities and from researchers and things like that. Together, we absolutely can be able to fight that fight, and we can push back and we can win.
This is a Security Weekly production. Security Weekly is a resource of Cyber Risk Alliance.
The Cybersecurity Collaborative and Google Chrome Enterprise is proud to present CISO Stories. Each week, CISO Stories takes a deep dive on security leadership with one of the contributors to my latest book, the #1 best-selling CISO Compass, Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers, as well as from other top CISOs and cybersecurity thought leaders. Listen to previous CISO Stories episodes at securityweekly.com/CSP. The Cybersecurity Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/CSC or visit cyberleadersunite.com. I'm your host, Todd Fitzgerald, and this week we welcome Jamil Farshchi, EVP and CISO at Equifax.
I got into security sort of by happenstance, but I did it because I love the I love a bunch of areas of it. The cloak and dagger nature of it. I love how dynamic it is. This field, unlike many others, like accounting or something, it changes all the time. It just keeps you on your toes. And I like the excitement, and I like to continue to learn and develop and stuff. And so that, and then I think the most important one is this whole notion of good versus evil. I like being on the side of the good guys, and to be able to fight and help people on a day-to-day basis. And I think that sort of the culmination of all those things makes it a really attractive field. I did not know when I first got into this, 20 years ago, that it was going to mature and evolve sort of like a rocket ship to the point where we are today. And it's such a seminal component of so many businesses and the government and geopolitical and whatever. But that's just been a cherry on top. And the fact that we get all of those same things that got me into this field to begin with. But at the same time, the impact and the visibility has just skyrocketed since back in the day. So I think it's a great field to be in, and I really encourage folks to consider it if those are the types of things that they would like to do day in and day out.
I think that's a great perspective, and it seems like there's so many people that I've met in this field that are like yourself, that are just very passionate about wanting to help the good side of the equation.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty common, I think, amongst the space, and so maybe we all sort of self-select into this area, but it's fun, and it keeps you on your toes all the time, which I think is also a very attractive component to it.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I know that you've been the CISO for Equifax, that you came in after the breach, and there may, I don't know who they would be, but there may be some listeners out there that aren't familiar with the Equifax breach that happened years ago. Could you just kind of walk us through there, what happened and what's been done since that we can all learn from?
Yeah, it happened back in 2017. I was at Home Depot at the time, actually, and I remember we were a customer, and so I was affected from that angle, from the supplier side. I was also personally, I was one of the victims myself, individually. But what happened was that so Equifax was compromised because there was an asset that was not patched, and then the adversary was able to exploit it. It was a struts vulnerability. They were able to get in and extract what amounted to, I think it was 147 million records associated with consumers, and it was a monumental watershed moment for the company. I mean, the customers were upset. The regulatory regime, I mean, we got scrutinized by, I mean, every regulator imaginable, and throughout the globe. I mean, we operate in 29 different countries, and at least that many regulators came, were looking into the situation. And then on top of that, you've just got the consumer aspect. So when you're looking at a population the size that was affected by this thing, there was just a ton of vitriol. So when I arrived here to help turn the program around, we were in a tough spot. The morale was really, really, really terrible. All that scrutiny and regulatory push. There was even a push from the government at the time to, threatening to potentially, nationalize this space. So it was really next level. But since that time, the board and the CEO and the leadership team here, we made a conscious decision at the time. We some organizations in the wake of a breach, they choose to sort of duck and cover or wait it out and hope that folks are going to forget about it over time. Instead, we chose to really lean in and invest, ensure it would never happen again, and to become a leader in the space instead. And so we invested a $1.6 billion to rebuild our entire technology stack, migrate to the cloud, implement the latest and greatest security tools. We hired, over 1,000 security professionals throughout the organization. We've been super, super transparent with every step of the way, and we've tried to give back to the community at large through things that most organizations don't do, like issuing a security annual report with a lot of details about our program. We published our control framework, which I don't know that any company has done before. We created an initiative around cloud control to be able to share out real time our cloud security posture with all of our customers that are in the cloud. So we've really tried to lean in on partnership, transparency, and really invest in the core to make sure that everything within our four walls is as secure as it can reasonably be.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that was a pretty significant cost as well. Did they ever add up what the costs, all the regulators and the lawsuits and all that sort of cost was as well?
I mean, it was significant. It was in the billions. I can say that. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it was a lot of expenditure for sure. But I think, you put the fines and the legal bills and stuff like that aside. The thing that makes me proud is that we, I think it's easy in retrospect because we've done a lot of stuff, and I think reputationally, at least within the security community, people know that, hey, we've done a lot of great things. But what makes me proud is that we took a risk, like committing the amount of resources and committing the amount of time and effort that we did as a company on security. I don't know that it's been done before to this degree. And if it has, it's just a handful of companies that are out there. And what it did is it didn't just help us reputationally. It didn't just help us, protect consumer data more effectively. But I think what it did is that it also made us more competitive as a business. And I think when we talk about security and enablement and things like that, we oftentimes think of it purely in the context of, well, what are the tools, and how next gen are the things that we're doing on the security side, and we forget about how security can fundamentally play a part in the success and growth of a business itself. And I think the risks that we took and the investments that we made have positioned this company for differentiation and competitive advantage, and for the years and decades to come. And that was a risk, and I think it was a bold move, but I think it's going to pay off in dividends in the future.
I remember seeing a session, from the Equifax team that was there about the stress around the team and what was going on, and it was very illuminating to see, these were real people's lives that are impacted with all the pressure that comes on that. And so, we all obviously want to avoid that kind of a breach. What advice would you give to companies that are smaller that can't invest the $1.6 billion in their security program? What were some of those key things that companies should really, if you were to say, start tomorrow, you need to do these things, what would some of those things be?
Yeah. Well, first I'll say you're right. The morale and the impact from folks here, I mean, it was dramatic. We literally had employees, just because they had an Equifax badge on, getting spat on as they walked outside of the building to go, after work and stuff like that. It was tough. And then you think about, just the security workforce in and of itself. You dedicate your life to this field, and you grind it out, and you make your way, and then you get something like this happens on your watch, and you can imagine how impactful that is, and demoralizing. I think it is. When you go home every single day, it's like, hey, I was there securing this thing when this breach happened. So you can imagine how tough that is. Look, I've in the wake of this thing, I got questions from everywhere, and most of the media, the congressional testimonies, customers, you name it, and most of the questions I got were all focused around the technical gaps. Hey, what was your patching process? And, why was this certificate not updated? And, how come you guys didn't know that there was sensitive data on this, or the volume of sensitive data on this particular asset, or whatever it might be? But when you really, and I think those are all important questions, but those are all manifestations of a bigger problem, Todd. And the problem is the culture of the organization. And I think I can speak with a fair amount of credibility here, because this isn't my first, mega breach turnaround, rebuilding that I've been involved with. And what I found throughout my career is that the technical stuff and the technical gaps, they arise as a result of an ineffective culture, and that culture is one that doesn't prioritize security, one that prioritizes, every dollar of incremental revenue at the expense of thoughtful risk management. When you're willing to cut corners on things because you don't think that big breach or the cyber threat is all that potentially impactful, then you get yourself into that situation. You don't invest as much as you should. You don't have the right governance processes in place. You don't have the right amount of visibility and a seat at the table with the board of directors or the executive teams. And those are the things that collectively end up resulting in these types of situations. It's really, really, really rare for all of those things to be working effectively, and organizations have, then a catastrophic breach afterwards. It's possible, and it has happened before, but it's just super, super rare. You don't need to invest $1.6 billion to have a good security program. You need to invest a ton if you want to be a fundamental leader within the space. But most organizations don't need that, and it doesn't probably make sense. What organizations need is a really strong culture in place, and then have adequate resources to be able to focus on the fundamentals of the security apparatus, whether it's investing in the tools or the processes, or ensuring you have the right kind of talent in place and things like that. Not everyone needs to be top tier. By definition, not everyone can be. I just think that by focusing on the culture, it's hard and it takes time. But if you focus on the culture, the rest of the stuff is just going to work out.
Yeah, I agree that culture is very important, and it also leads into our topic today, which is collective defense, the importance of partnerships in cybersecurity, because we clearly can't do this alone. Tell us about that. What sort of partnerships do you think are important to have around security?
It's hard to say which ones are important. I mean, I think they're all important to a degree. For me, it started with our customers and the broader security community. And the reason I did this just because, quite frankly, I was more familiar with that group of folks. And there's a ton of expertise that we have in the community and amongst the CISO leaders and security professionals that we have out there. For me, it was easier at Equifax because we are partners with so many leading organizations, particularly in the financial services sector, and there's a ton of expertise there. So that's one, making sure you have your partners and you're sharing information. The amount of intelligence and insights I get, whether it's a given some new threat, or it's some new type of activity that's going on that I want to be aware of, or it's just best practice stuff. Hey, I implemented this tool. It's fantastic. Or, hey, have you thought about implementing this type of process for SSDLC or whatever it might be? I think all that stuff is great. And so make sure that you have those things in place. But the one that is we've really focused on, I don't know, I guess the last 3 or 4 years now, has been with the government agencies. We spend a ton of time with the FBI. CISA actually was literally right before this meeting. They're in my conference room here. We were chatting about partnering on some things around supply chain, and even doing tabletop exercises with my board of directors and stuff. Those kinds of relationships are huge. It was just a few months ago this year. I got a heads up from both CISA and the FBI around a potential threat that was targeting Equifax. And, I got this call, just got a random call when I was in New York one time. And one thing leads to another. And it turns out that the intelligence that they provided us was spot on. And it gave us, I think it was 124 hours of a head start on a threat that ended up hitting us exactly like they said. And because of that advanced warning that we received from them, it was a non-issue. It didn't, it was like a blip on the radar for us because we were able to prepare for it. That kind of partnership and that kind of intelligence is absolutely huge. I'm a strategic advisor for the FBI as of last year. So I've been doing it for about a year now. And the insights that they have provided me makes Equifax more secure and on a consistent basis. I mean, whether it's working with the field offices to learn about a given threat actor and some of the tools and tactics and procedures and MOs and whatever that they have. Or it's just getting an understanding of, hey, look, I saw some denial of service activity. Are you guys seeing this kind of stuff more broadly? And having those folks on speed dial, whether it's CISA or the FBI, like it's a huge boon. And I think that the more organizations need to lean in that space because it's an opportunity and it's a value add that many organizations are not fully taking advantage of. Between those two groups, I think those are probably the two most important. But we spend a lot of time with the universities, both from a recruiting standpoint as well as from sort of a next gen development perspective in terms of technologies and things like that and research work. There's a whole host of folks. My philosophy is that none of us can do this by ourselves. If whatever China or Russia or some nation state decides to target Equifax, if it's just us all by ourselves, the likelihood that we're going to be able to stop something is pretty low. I mean, the amount of resources and dedication that they have, it's unrealistic to expect that any of us can survive that by ourselves. But together, with all of the ecosystem partners that we have in the security space, with the powers of the federal agencies that they can bring to bear, with the knowledge and insights that we get from universities and from researchers and things like that, together, we absolutely can be able to fight that fight, and we can push back and we can win. By ourselves, we cannot.
The article this podcast is based upon can be viewed in the best-selling cybersecurity leadership book, CISO Compass, Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers. Is there a downside to sharing the information and collaborating with that? There used to be this fear of the FBI coming in, taking your servers, and what does that look like today?
It's old tape. I used to subscribe to that too back in the day. And to some degree, it used to be true. Like the federal government used to be a little bit leakier than we would like in the security space. And I don't know. I can't think of any specific examples of anyone. I think it was just rumor mill stuff around the FBI coming in and taking everything. But from everything that I have seen in the last several years, that's just old tape. It's just not true. They are very tight-lipped. They are very sort of business centric in terms of coming in to do the right thing and to help, and not to try to run roughshod over everybody. I think that I just don't see any meaningful downside. They'll even back off if you're like, hey, I don't have the capacity to do this stuff. Or like I was talking to CISA earlier today, they're willing to work, and this is still a pilot thing, but they're even willing to, they're trying to work to establish MOUs and stuff so that organizations, if they are facing a cyber event, they're able to have clear and explicit guidelines for who they would contact, and having a single point of contact, and then allowing these other agencies to be able to spread the word and work with the other regulators to be able to satisfy whatever the reporting requirements would be for them. So that I feel like they're trying in a variety of ways to be strong partners to us. And it just behooves us to be able to lean in and partner with them and do the same thing. I think one of the weaknesses that we have seen, that I continue to see today, quite frankly, is that there's this notion that the government's responsibility is to just be one way. They're supposed to come in and save the day and do all this stuff. And if they don't, then they're not doing their jobs. But there's not nearly as much of an emphasis on the fact that it's a two-way road. We need to share information. We need to partner with them. We need to engage with them too. And to expect that they're going to be able to come in and do all of these great things for us, despite us not ever really having established a relationship or work with them or assisted them or whatever, it's just unrealistic. This is a two-way road, and we have to partner, and we both have to be able to lean in and apply some level of effort if we're going to be able to get the value out of it.
You think companies are reluctant to do that when their legal teams get involved and say, I don't know if you should be sharing this information in the event that we have a breach, and now that this information is out there?
Oh, I know they are. I know they are for a fact. Some of that is by virtue of that old tape that you were just describing. Some of it is also, maybe even the majority of it, is due to just this ongoing fear of and trying to keep close hold of information to be able to manage a given situation. I think sort of it's in the DNA of a lot of lawyers to keep things as close hold as they can for control reasons. So that is an obstacle. There's no question about it. And some GCs are more open to it than others. But I think that if you're able to chip away at it, if you're able to start to substantiate the value proposition that the federal government can afford, maybe even just one agency at a time, you can overcome that. And I've been able to overcome it consistently, not by throwing the kitchen sink at them and saying, hey, we're going to go full open kimono on everything with the federal government, but saying, hey, let's start out with a partnership with the FBI or the Secret Service or CISA, and taking it and letting them see what the value is there, and then they become more open to additional engagement models and being more transparent with the associated agencies.
How do you find sharing information and threat intelligence information across the different CISO groups, like all the different ISACs and the different collaborations of CISOs? Is that been valuable? And do you see other people contributing to that, or is that a one-way share as well?
No, that's hugely valuable. That's been, honestly, from a partnership standpoint, that's been the one consistently useful mechanism to be able to share and gain meaningful insights. The unfortunate part about it, I think, is that in many respects, while you have things like the ISACs and so forth that are good at being able to share more concrete, automated kind of insights, the best information you're going to get is from other peers, and it's going to be based on the relationships that you create. I mean, the number of people that I call or text on a regular basis for insights about whatever you name the topic, it's going to be in there, is extensive. I consistently reach out to my network to be able to help me out with things, and they consistently show up. And everything from leadership issues to new regulations to how to be able to tackle the latest threat, or are they seeing the same things that I'm seeing? It is an absolutely invaluable resource, I think, for all of us. The challenge and the gap there, though, I think, is until you're able to build up that relationship and that network more broadly, it's tough, and you're kind of on your own little island until you do that. And when I look at my own career, it's one of the things that I didn't value enough at all early on. I thought, hey, you know what? I know enough. I can do this. And I didn't put enough emphasis in that area, and I think I did that to my own detriment. And I don't know, it was about a decade ago. I decided I sort of changed my approach after working with some folks and getting some really valuable insights from them. And I shifted, and I put a lot more time and effort in terms of building those relationships up, not just joining the ISACs and going to conferences and stuff like that, but actually engaging with my peers and building up that network. And it's been invaluable. And I strongly recommend, especially early stage security professionals, but most certainly the ones anyone who's sitting in the seat of a CISO, to prioritize that. It will provide you it'll buttress a tremendous amount of your decisions, and it'll help you in so many ways that you just don't realize right off the top.
Yeah, and that's why in writing the CISO Compass book, I included 75 other top CISOs and industry leaders, because I wanted that message of collaboration to come through, that each of us knows slices of the security field, but nobody knows it all. And that's kind of the little secret in this field. Nobody really knows it all. And the Cybersecurity Collaborative, where we bring together people, which sponsors this podcast, bring together CISOs to actually work on problems and come up with guidance to make that available for everybody. And we now have over 1,000 people, 1,000 CISOs in just past this milestone, in the cybersecurity forums and the collaborations with the Cyber Risk Alliance. So, it's very important. And I guess the one of the questions really is, how does the next generation of CISOs form these bonds? Should we be bringing them with us to these other these other events, to because I see, among the old guard, I guess, they're communicating with each other, but there's that the next layer up that are they collaborating in the same way?
Well, that was my point before. If you're an early stage CISO or aspiring to be one, or I don't know, even if you're just in the security space in general, the collaboration is infinitely important. And so, yes, we should be. I try, with my teams at all levels, but especially with my leadership team, I do my best to be able to give them as much exposure as possible, whether it's to events and networking and stuff like that, or it's just the more blocking and tackling stuff. Like I bring at least a couple of my directs to every board meeting that I do. So they, even if they don't speak sometimes, but normally I'll give them a speaking part so they can hear the dialogue and they can see what it's like doing that kind of thing. Or for every month I update my CEO and the executive leadership team, and I bring them, and every one of them has a part as they go through it to give them a learning experience there. I think that it's our job as the old guard, as you call us. I am pretty old, I guess, but like I think it's incumbent upon us to help build up that next generation. And I remember the first board meeting I ever did. It was a complete disaster because I had no idea what I was doing. And I was just flying by the seat of my pants thinking, oh, this is how you do things. And, I was super nervous. I talked crazy fast. I was way too technical. And it took me a long time to get oriented and to sort of get my footing in that space, which is one of the reasons why I put my people in that position so that they're able to experience it firsthand. They're able to see how it's done and not have to go through a lot of the, painstaking mistakes and errors and things, tribulations and so forth that I had to go through. And I think the same thing applies to the networking stuff. If you're able to have that broader network and you're able to collaborate with folks who have done it in all of these different areas, then you're going to be putting yourself in the best position possible to perform at your peak when your company really needs you. So I completely agree with you.
Well, this has been great, Jamil. What final advice would you give to emerging CISOs, current CISOs, experienced CISOs as they're going down this journey of building partnerships?
I would say you're going to get out as much as you put in. It's easy to go to an event and sit there and listen. It's easy to chat up some vendor or go to a meeting with a university or whatever. It's easy, quite frankly, to even have one phone call with somebody and okay. It's about keeping that up. And it's about putting in the effort day in and day out. Think of it sort of like a sales role, right? You want to keep your contacts hot and stuff like that. If you let those if you don't put effort into it, if you don't invest your time, and if you don't give back, then it's unlikely that you're going to get a ton out of those things. It's not just about glad handing folks and saying, oh, I've met this person, I met that person. It's about getting something out of it, and to do that, I think you got to put a lot in. So whatever stage you're in, and certainly if you're early stage, really lean in on this stuff. And then not as much around partnership, but this is something that really I try to give this advice to a lot of my own folks consistently. Security is super important. And we have a very, very critical job that's demanding, ever changing, and all of that. And organizations typically have a tremendous amount of work they need to do to be able to manage their risk and improve their risk posture. But this is a big but. Security is not the end all be all. If we go in and we believe incorrectly that security is the most important thing for any given organization, we're going to fail. Our job is to make sure that we find the right balance and that we make thoughtful decisions and try to figure out the best way to be able to manage down that risk or to communicate that risk so that business leaders can make decisions around what actually matters and what doesn't. And I think we oftentimes fall into this trap of security being so important that we're going to stick to our guns no matter what. inflexibly, which then creates this notion of security being that organization of no. Had I known earlier in my career how important collaboration and compromise was within a given organization, it would have helped me dramatically. It's one of the biggest challenges that I think that we oftentimes face. And we complain about budgets, complain about the seat of the table, all this other stuff. A lot of times it's due in part to our own decisions and our own behaviors. And so my advice to folks is to really try to work with people the same way we would work with our own peers and collaborating and putting in the effort to share information, understand their points of view, trying to adopt the best practices. Do the same thing within your organization with the non-security folks that you're working with, whether it's technology or your legal folks or it's your finance people. Work as a partner, as a unit. That's the way you're going to get things done, and that's how you're ultimately going to be as successful as you can be within your security capacity.
I think that's excellent advice. Thanks a lot, Jamil.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Todd.
Are you constantly thinking about how to keep your enterprise as secure as possible? Get to know Chrome Enterprise, the browser that will secure your organization without the added expense and complexity of additional browsers. Its simplified management features will free up your team to focus on critical security tasks that can be overlooked because of the time and attention it takes to manage other solutions. Don't settle for a browser that compromises your organization. Visit securityweekly.com/Chrome now to start protecting your organization like never